bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. Ready? This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go. Go.
Yeah, I say let's go to a football season that is still 10 days from getting underway, at least for the Philadelphia Eagles. But as of right now, we know who the 53 guys are going to be playing next Sunday. No, we don't. And we'll talk about that for the next couple hours here on Birds 365. Back on that, guys. John McMullen, Jody McDonald. Busy day for Johnny Mack yesterday. Did you get more than 2 questions in yesterday, Johnny Mack?
I believe I got 3 in.
Yeah, I was watching the press availability. I go, oh, that's McMullen. Oh, that's McMullen again.
Well,
Johnny Mack getting a third question. Were you the only one who showed up?
No, everybody was there. See, here was the problem. They didn't release the roster to us, so we didn't know who was on the stinking team. And Howie's already up there, ready to go. And Howie's kind of important in the organization.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know that, but meanwhile, the the employees that are supposed to release this stuff, we didn't have it. So we're all sitting there. And I think Rube asked the first question about Isaiah Rodgers, because we're all sitting there going down the cut. Now, we knew the vast majority, but there were 5, 6 we didn't know. And we're all trying to scan the list and trying to figure it out. So you heard some redundant questions, and that's because people couldn't listen because they were studying the list, and they only released the cuts. They didn't release the actual roster of the guys on the team. Oh, it was a cluster, Jody. It was a cluster. I said, now this is competitive advantage.
Right.
So
to not allow the media to be prepared and ready to go. But that speaks very highly of you that you were able to come up with questions like that without having all the information there.
Most of mine were philosophical questions. That's the reason I went that way, because I was talking to Howie about all the changes and the waiver wire and the practice squad, the expanded practice squad over the past couple of years, the ability to put veterans on the more liberal IR rules, because you've seen this change. People already, people are like, the only thing I get mad, I get stuff wrong all the time. Like I'll say, Jody was completely right on Eli Ricks. They were concerned about losing him on waivers. I have no problem admitting that. I think people turn off. That's what bothers me. And they say, oh, McMullen got it wrong. And I'm like, what I said was, it doesn't matter, because they'll get all of them through waivers. Now we'll never be able to prove that.
About Rick. We'll never know.
We'll never know.
To keep him.
And hey, somebody might pick up, they kept Goodrich as well. And somebody might pick up Gardner. I don't think they will. And ultimately, they'll have all 3, which is what I said. And I said, John McMullen, would take Bakai Gardner, because I think he played better over the summer. And he's a special teams player. And that's one of the questions I asked. I said it yesterday on the show. I'm like, poor Michael Clay. I mean, people crap on the guy.
Holy
They didn't
mackerel.
help him
Not
a little bit, Jody.
They don't have a punter. They
Well, they're
don't have
gonna
a
have a
punt
punter.
returner.
Yeah, and they're
As
gonna
of right
have
now, they don't. That's why I said at
no.
the top.
Yeah,
Yeah, this isn't the.
no. Well, yeah, they have to have
Excuse
they
me,
have
this
to have a
isn't the
punter.
53.
They have to have a punter week 1 in New England, obviously. So there's going to be change. I can't believe they're going to go into a season with only 4 wide receivers as well, to be honest. That's very light at a position you need bodies at. And a bunch of guys are going to be back on the practice squad. We're going to see it today. The Eagles are practicing a little bit later because they want to have their practice squad out there, or the vast majority of it, the guys they're bringing back. So they have to wait till waivers at 1 o'clock. But yeah, they'll have a lot of bodies there, and I'm sure they'll have some special teams bodies, and they'll, Garner will be back if he doesn't get claimed. Van Sumeren will be back if he doesn't get claimed. I've already heard Kayvon Wallace is not coming back. We'll see if that shakes out.
Not coming back because there are other teams interested, not that the Eagles have written them off, right?
Yeah. No. I think the Eagles would love to have him back. I think he wants a change of scenery because, well, I know I talked to Kayvon a bunch this summer, and he had a good camp, and I think he sees, sometimes you get pigeonholed in an organization. I think they pigeonholed him and they put him in a box, and he probably thinks he needs a change of scenery. He's probably right. And hopefully wherever he goes, he'll get a second chance, and maybe he can prove some things. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people pointed out to me they weren't very good on special teams, which I know. We talked about that a lot, Jody, you and I. And that's true. And in theory, the goal is to get better. So if you're saying, well, these guys weren't that good to begin with, maybe the new guys will be better. Well, who are the new guys? I mean, they typically, when you talk about your core special teams players, right? You talk about backup linebackers. They got one, and he's their special teams player, Christian Ellis. Your backup safeties, and they cut Kayvon Wallace, so it's going to have to be whether Justin Evans, Terrell Edmonds, Sidney Brown, some amalgamation, whoever they choose. The other two are going to have to be big on special teams. Backup defensive back, so that's where Calais Ringo's got to step in right away and be a good special teams player. He's got the athleticism for it. Backup wide receivers, also a big special teams. They don't have any backup. They Wes ain't playing special teams. Alameda can return punts if they need him to, but that's it. I mean, yeah, I realize nobody cares about it, but I'm like, oof.
They left Michael Clay. They just left him out to dry. We'll see if there are any reparations over the next 24, 48 hours. But right now, it looks like can you get 11 guys to play punt coverage, Michael Clay? Good luck. See if you get those guys. Along those lines, one question. I got like 40 questions for you. Last year, Reed Blankenship, when not starting, when CJGJ was your starter, Blankenship play specials, and we know he's the main guy at safety now. Got deference, didn't have to play preseason games, looked great in practice, everything else. They used to have a guy named Malcolm Jenkins, who was also their number one safety, who they put out there for every special teams play, played every play of the game except for offense. Will Blankenship be part of the special team?
He might have to be. And Rodney did that as well. Give Rodney some credit. Rodney McLeod did that as well. He might have to. N'Kobe might have to. That's where we are now. They might get to the 53 and they're going to bring in a punter, as I said. I think they'll try to bring in a receiver, maybe another linebacker. We'll see how they shake things. I can't imagine they're going to carry 4 tight ends, but so ultimately I think they're going to try to manipulate Calcaterra onto the practice squad, but we'll see how that shakes out. You might see where they elevate 2 guys each week early in the season to play special teams and just make some of those back end guys inactive on the 53. And they, whether it's Garner, Van Sumeren, and somebody like, they elevate those guys to actually play. and the other guys are inactive, they
Right,
might
but you can
handle
only
it
do
that
that
way.
3 times, right?
Yeah, you can only do
Elevate a
that
guy
3
from the practice
times.
squad 3 times, and then after that, he has to be on the 53.
Yeah, and that's why I said early in the season they might do that. They did that at punt returner with Cubby last year. He wasn't on the roster. They elevated him for the first 3 games, and then they added him to the roster. And typically over the first, you might get a banged up injury. Somebody goes to injury reserve. You might open up a roster spot. So they might handle it that way. And that's why we call it the initial 53.
Right.
It's not the final
And
53.
it's not even the initial 53 might be a matter of hours. If there are claims, the Eagles decide there's someone out there that they want, they put in a claim and they get the claim. And that's as tricky a part as anything because they're number 31 on the list. It goes by the reverse of last year's standing. So you could put a claim for a guy, think you're going to get a guy going to solve a problem. Oops, somebody else claimed him before you, so you don't get him anyway. So today is still a very important day for roster movement. When Howie sat down before you guys yesterday, had you been informed that they had traded for Albert O?
Yes, we did know that.
They did give you that piece of info ahead of time, huh?
Yeah, we did know that. So we did know, and I'm not going to try to butcher Albert's name just yet before I get a chance to learn it. So we're going to call him Albert O for the time being. Yeah, we did know that, but we didn't know if Calcaterra made it. Like I assumed Alberto was going to replace Calcaterra, and he wasn't going to be on the roster. So, you have to sift through the cuts when they finally do it in press conference. And sure enough, Calcaterra is not on the list, which kind of surprised me after the trade. But yeah, I mean, they went very heavy on the defensive front, which I knew they were going to do. They kept 13 guys, Jody, 13. Now I had them keeping 12. And I knew they wanted to keep Kentavious Street. I'm like, well, you can't keep 13. I mean, you just can't. Well, they did. I mean, they did. And those are their best players. So if you look at it that way, he's certainly one of their 53 best players.
Right. But here's the guy who doesn't necessarily look at that way. Michael Clay. Is Kentavious Street going to go down and cover punts or kicks? I don't think so. So you want to keep 13 D linemen. Somebody has to play special teams.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Nolan Smith, if he's healthy, he's going to be a big part of it as well. And he's athletic enough to do it. They also cut Kyron Johnson, who's a big specialty. I mean, they gutted this. And I get it. They weren't good on special teams, but they weren't good with their best players. Now they don't have their best players and no obvious replacements. So there's going to be a lot of movement. It's just a snapshot right now. It doesn't look good for Michael Clay. They're going to do some things, and it might just be as simple as elevating, as I said, certain guys and not playing other guys early in the season. Then ultimately, if somebody plays well, like say they bring Kyron back, and somebody plays well those first 3 weeks on special teams, then they're going to get a roster spot. And they're going to, they'll go about it that way. So I'm by no estimation am I saying they're not going to address it, because I think they're going to address it. I'm just surprised, a little bit surprised, not a lot, but a little bit surprised that the Eagles kind of went as close as they ever have, at least since I've been here, to keeping the 53 best guys that they thought without, without sort of thinking about typical roster building.
Well, I'll buy the typical roster building, but typical roster building for me also includes having someone who can cover a kick or a punt. And they're putting that aside. It's nice to be able to say, we kept the 53 best football players, but you got to put a comma in there from the line of scrimmage. Then you add special teams, and I don't know if they kept the 53 best
well, that's
players.
fair. That's fair, but nobody cares. I mean, let's be honest. Nobody cares. Nobody cares until they care. Look, and even the Super Bowl, you would think, and I always laud this organization, always, for generally making sound decisions. You've heard me say that numerous times.
Sure.
They did not learn their lesson from the Super Bowl. I think for whatever reason, people were clouded by the tampering afterwards. And they forgot the biggest play of the game. Now, hey, granted, the defense didn't play well. The biggest play of the game was the punt return. That's the play that tilted the game to Kansas City. That's the game that tilted the game toward Kansas City. And it was certainly part punter, but it was also part coverage. And they had the number 3 offense in the NFL, Jody. They had the number 2 defense in the NFL. They had a bottom 5 special teams group. Bottom 5, if you want to look at PFF, if you want to look at Rick Gosselin's annual rankings, bottom 5 in both.
That's why I was borderline shocked when they gave Michael Clay a contract extension. But after what they did today, I'm going to give Michael Clay a lot of rope, because it looks to me like they did not care about the talent and or the accomplishment of guys on this roster who have special teams experience. It really is.
And you know what's funny about it, Jody? Dating back to Andy Reid, this team was famous. It was John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh was the best special teams coach of a generation who became an NFL head coach because of his special teams work. Now, at the very end, Andy shifted him to whatever it was, secondary,
DBs,
to get him out, because those guys are pigeonholed. They're not thought of as head coaching candidates. And they were always famous. And then Chip came in with Dave Phipp, and whether it was Ike Reese, your buddy from WIP, whether it was, Chris Maragos is one of the best special teams players I've ever seen. Brian Brayman. On and on and on. They were always famous for these guys that their resume led with special teams. They don't do that anymore.
And we'll see if they pay a price for it. All right. Our first guest is going to join us in just a couple minutes. We've never had Olivia on before. And I'm going to call her Olivia R, much like Albert O, because we're not 100% sure on the pronunciation of her last name.
I just call her Olivia. So,
Okay, we'll call her Olivia, but we'll also ask her how we get her last name correct. 2 things I learned yesterday, and for future reference, maybe Eagle fans should want to try and remember this as well. Number 1, the Eagles don't care about preseason games. There's some nuance to that. They kept Ricks because of the preseason game and games they played. So maybe they put more emphasis on it than we like to believe. And number 2, you can't always take the coach's plaudits and try and read between the lines. Because if that were the case, Trey Sermon would be on this football team. And as expected, he was told, yeah, we don't quite have a roster spot for you.
By the way, real quick, Jody, Albert O, too, they talked about his 100-yard
100-yard game. How he went right to the last preseason game stats.
What are you talking about?
In the last preseason game.
I'm like, who am I speaking to, and who took Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni? All of a sudden, preseason action means something.
That's what I came away from yesterday. Yeah. So put that one in your back pocket for next year when we get there. Don't just dismiss all the preseason games. Yeah. I was looking 23 guys in civilian clothes for the
Jody, I was looking for the aliens who the invasion of the body snatchers. What the hell are these guys talking about?
I knew it was Howie and Nick because they were trying to be funny.
Oh, yeah.
Apologizing to Jordan Mailata because he won't be returning punts this upcoming season. It was Nick and it was Howie up there, but they may have changed.
Howie's always workshopping material and it never lands, but God bless him. He keeps trying.
All right. He's McMullen. I'm McDonald. That makes us Mac and Mac on Birds 365. Olivia R. Yeah, we're going to get that exact pronunciation, which he joins us next from the Inquirer here on Birds 365.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia Dreams. Oh, and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Day after cutdowns on Birds 365. McMullen and McDonald here to continue to analyze the Eagle roster. And we've got a helping hand to join us. It is Olivia R. from the Inquirer, and we call her Olivia R. because much like with Albert O., the new Eagle tight end, we're not going to
Could go two ways, Olivia. So I just call you Olivia. So I'm not like Miss Reiner. Is it Reiner? Is it Rainer? Reiner? All right, that's what I went.
You got it. It's Reiner.
Reiner?
Yep.
Yeah.
Damn, I was wrong. I was taking a guess. McMullen was right.
I'm feeling a little left out. I didn't really realize that you're both Mac. And I'm just Reiner, so that's. I guess I got to change my last name.
No. Mac Reiner's not going to work. You stick with Reiner. And thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate it greatly. John and I have been kicking back a couple of things on the Eagles cut down, and there are some surprises there. And the one that just jumps out to me more than anything else is poor Michael Clay. Are they just going to? He might have to play guys whose last name he can't pronounce or doesn't know well enough, because I don't know who the hell he's going to put out there for special teams. Yeah. Has it become that in the NFL? Or are the Eagles on an island by themselves here, just disregarding special teams? Or is this another trend like devaluing running backs? Pretty soon everybody in the league's going to be doing it.
I'm not too sure, but I think the Eagles, first of all, I think it's said a lot, but it's the initial 53. It's not the final 53. So the roster that we're seeing yesterday and right now is going to be different than the roster that we're seeing on game day, certainly, but even in 5 hours from now, or, so on and so forth, especially given the fact that the Eagles will have practice squad elevation. So the game day roster will be different. But that said, yeah, it's interesting. I'm not entirely certain what the plan is on special teams. It definitely seems like they're thin in that regard, but especially when it comes to punt returner, punter, we're going to have
thin
some
at
more
punter
here soon. Non-existent at punter,
yeah.
some might say.
And I want to warn people that the Eagles made it pretty clear that, hey, Aaron Cepas might be back. He might be on the practice squad. They're going to work out some guys, but if they don't like what they see, they kind of made it clear that we still like Aaron. So if everybody's celebrating that, they should probably pump their brakes. Is that kind of the same sense you got?
Yeah. Punt or pump the brakes. Yeah, it definitely seems like that a practice squad return could be a possibility there, but of course, Howie Roseman and the Eagles will do their due diligence, bring some punters in. Perhaps they've already had some eyes on some punters as they look to identify who that next guy is. But you're right, John. I mean, we heard from Howie Roseman yesterday, and he said that although Aaron Siposs may not have been happy with the way that the season ended last year for himself, certainly the team was not happy for the way that the season ended. The team still has confidence in Siposs. So at least that's what they're saying publicly. Siposs kind of echoed a similar sentiment when we spoke to him a few weeks ago in training camp. So there's a chance that we can see him return to the practice squad. However, the Eagles will look around the league, see who's out there. Plenty of punters were released from their training camp rosters, so perhaps the Eagles are mulling some of those guys over.
One of the numbers that jumped out to me, Olivia, was 3 linebackers. It just, you look like a nice young lady. John and I are 2 old men. I remember when there were like 6 to 7 to 8 linebackers on an NFL roster, not 3. I get it. The game has changed, and on some rosters, they actually list Hassan Reddick as a linebacker. He's not a linebacker. He's an edge player. He's a defensive end. But 3 linebackers on the entire team. And here's the fear I have. I think they're going to go with 3 linebackers. I don't think this is a roster maneuver. We're going to add one at another time. I think there's a good chance they're going to only have 3 linebackers on the roster all year. Who are those safeties who are going to get extra time at linebacker if they're going to be playing big nickel and dropping safeties down into the box?
Yeah, well, I think it's not just the safeties that will be contributing to that area, at least chipping in at inside linebacker. We also saw throughout training camp, we also saw some of the edge rushers contributing, like Patrick Johnson and Nolan Smith. I don't know really how they feel about trying to get Nolan Smith out there when he's really just getting used to the NFL and getting used to the edge rusher position at this level. It might be a little too much at once, but when we spoke to Coach Nick Sirianni yesterday, he said that they got some eyes on Patrick Johnson in that role during training camp, and that they liked what they saw there. So it's a possibility that we see some of the edge rushers contribute at inside linebacker. And then, who knows? Potentially see some safeties in there. But I mean, right now we're still trying to get a sense of who is going to start alongside Reed Blankenship come week 1. So definitely a little bit of an eyebrow raiser about the how thin that position is right now. They're putting a lot of confidence in Nakobe Dean and even Zach Cunningham, who they signed during training camp to fill in that role. Big leap for Nakobe Dean in his 2nd year in the league. So still a lot of questions there at inside linebacker. It would not shock me if they tried to bring in someone else in the coming days.
Yeah, and we saw a lot from Sean Desai, sort of these curveballs, I like to call them, James Bradbury in the slot. I saw Josh Sweat dropping at points in the coverage, and he, I like that. He likes to throw in the curveball, but you don't want that consistently. So there's 2 positions I'm concerned about numbers wise. And again, as we say, initial, not final, initial, linebacker, and then wide receiver. And Olivia, because those are 2 where you take sort of a pounding, a different type of pounding at linebacker than wide receiver. But receiver, you have the soft tissues you have to worry about. You have to practice. You need bodies to practice. And you see by the 90-man roster how built it is with wide receivers, cornerbacks as well. But they kept a ton of corners, so I'm not as concerned there. Just from the standpoint of the wear and tear of an NFL season, I think the Eagles got a little spoiled by the health of TJ Edwards and Kaiser White last year. Played all 20 games. It's probably not going to happen again. And Zach Cunningham just got here. That's a concern for me. Shouldn't the Eagles have a better plan B, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a fair question, and you can make the same similar arguments across the lineup just about the health. I mean, this was such a healthy team last season, and they really benefited from it all season long, getting to the Super Bowl, being able to bring out so many of their week 1 starters onto the field. It doesn't happen. And so in that sense, the Eagles could be due for a regression just because it's so rare that teams stay so healthy. So yeah, of course, when they're going to be thin at a certain position, that there are going to be those concerns. So that means that the general manager is going to have those backup plans. And as we've been saying all along, what we're seeing right now isn't necessarily the finished product. It's definitely not the finished product, and it's most likely not the exact iteration of the roster that we're going to see come as we get closer and closer to week 1. So I'm not rushing to any sort of conclusions, but I will say you're right. It definitely, the fact that they are so thin at certain positions, they don't want it to come back and bite them if they do end up dealing with any injuries.
And oh, by the way, John's point, the reason why Zach Cunningham was available all the way into training camp is because he's been injury prone. So we expect him to come here and have no injuries whatsoever while playing every down for the Eagle. That's a good plan. We'll see. And it's so funny, Olivia. We do this every day. And last year at this time, even leading up to the season, we could have called it Hurts 365 because that's all we talked about with Jalen Hurts. Is he going to be good enough? Should he be the full-time quarterback? Is he stepping forward? Now we never even mention the guy's name. He's such a given, and that we just assume he's going to pick up right where he left off as one of the best, maybe second best quarterback in the National Football League. Are we missing the forest through the trees here, Olivia? Is there any chance that Jalen doesn't come out and ball out and dominate? Because we're all just putting it down in the given column for the Eagles quarterback this year.
Sure, and I can understand that mentality because until you are you reach a certain level in this league, especially at that position, unless your name is Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes, there's always going to be an element of this guy has to prove himself. Can he do what he did last year? So I understand that approach and that thought process when it comes to Jalen Hurts, or really to any young quarterback looking to establish themselves in the league. However, with Hurts specifically, we've seen so much progression year over year, not just in the league, but also in college, continuously developing, continuously getting better, and continuously learning how to use all three aspects of his game that he likes to talk about, being a triple threat, using his arm, his legs, his mind on the field. He continues to take a step in his game every single year, especially culminating in last season when he was the runner-up MVP. So to me, in my mind, it's less of a concern. I don't think we saw anything that should make us feel nervous about Hurts going into this upcoming season, coming out of training camp. He did not get any preseason reps, just like the majority of the other starters. However, in training camp, he looked good, connecting with all the usual suspects, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, and looking good on the ground as well. So I think of all of the concerns that the Eagles may have going into the regular season, Jalen Hurts should not be one of them.
Yeah, zero concern other than I hope I don't have to see Marcus Mariota. Nothing against Marcus, nice guy, but you hope you don't have to see him play this year. Jalen had a tremendous, tremendous summer. There's no evidence of, Jeffrey Lurie called him the most mature 24-year-old he's ever met. Now he's 25. That hasn't changed.
I just can't. The fact that he's 25 years old, it is kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah,
mind-boggling. Not only just the way
he's more
he
mature
plays.
than me. He's an old soul. It's bizarre. But we had kind of an interesting day in that, we're talking to the GM of the Eagles and we don't know who's got. So we're all like culling over the list when they finally get it to us. Well, while you were doing that, any surprises jump out at you? Or did you say,
Yeah, it's easy for me to say that there were no surprises, but I also, my 53-man roster that I contributed to the beat pool, I didn't win. So
I didn't win either. No shame there.
I can't say that.
Suspects did not do well. That would be me, Jimmy, Kempsky, Bo Wolf. Jeff is in it. Jeff's still in it. Jeff McLean, your colleague at the Inquirer. So he's the only one. Dave Zangaro's not in it. So yeah, they surprised a bunch of us. So I wouldn't.
Well, good
I
for them.
wouldn't take yourself so harshly. Yeah.
It's okay. I'll brush it off. I learned. I think I was too conservative. I think they were smart, and it's easy looking back in hindsight, but they were smart to go light at the positions where the Eagles just didn't have as much talent at the top. Or sorry, I guess I should say more depth wise. Going light at receiver, going light at linebacker, even at safety, especially among the specialists. Like, for example, I had Britton Covey on my roster. I had Aaron Sipas on my roster. So I could have been a little bit more maybe liberal with the cuts and trying to go heavier at other places on the roster, especially along the defensive line, cornerback.
Front. What are they trying to collect? Defensive front players? Are they trying to get the first 53-man defensive fronts? 13. Because I knew they wanted to keep Contavious Street, and I said to myself, well, they can't keep 13. They can't. Well, they did. I keep going back to Michael Clay. Like, what's Michael Clay supposed to do with Contavious Street or Moro Ajomo? I mean, and you know, Olivia, it's understandable you keep Moro. That's why I kept Moro on my 53, because he's a young player. Contavious is a vested veteran. You can put him on the street. You can say, hey, do what you did with Fred Johnson. We're going to bring you back. We love you. Give him all the accolades. I don't know. This is, I think there's valid criticism there, but it's only going to show up if the Eagles don't perform on special teams.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. It was a little bit of I wasn't necessarily expecting all of those names being kept on the roster at defensive tackle, but I guess they don't want to, the guys that would be subjected to waivers, they don't want to risk losing them, or they don't want them to walk. So this is, I guess you got to do what you got to do, but it certainly leaves some questions to be answered elsewhere on the roster and elsewhere, especially on special teams.
Now, I've got a read between the lines roster question for you, and it's probably unfair, but I'll apologize for it in advance. We know it's a collaborative effort. When they came up with the 53 names yesterday, it was done by a large group of people. Howie is the main guy. It's going to be on his resume at the end of the day, right, wrong, or indifferent. How much do you think the new coordinators had a hand in this? They're both new to the position. They're both respected and got the gigs, but do you think they had influence with, if you believe Howie is the main driver of the bus, do you think they had minimal influence, decent influence, overriding influence in how this 53-man was put together?
It's a good question, and I will say whatever comes out of my mouth is just speculation. So
right. That's why I said it was an unfair question. I'm asking you to speculate for me, Olivia.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think they should have a seat at the table where the conversation is happening, because they're the ones out on the field evaluating the talent, dealing with them every single day. They should have some degree of influence, but at the end of the day, should they be the ones making the decisions? No, and of course they're not. That's Howie Roseman's job. He has the final say. But yeah, I think that their influence should matter to an extent. Just because they're new to their roles doesn't make them new to football or new to evaluating good talent. I think that if the Eagles saw enough in them to put them in their roles, then they should trust their talent evaluation skills as well. So I would imagine that they should have some sort of voice in that room. But how much of a voice, I don't really know.
Bit of a initiation to the show here for you, Olivia, because at some point you're going to learn that Jody does not like Derek Barnett.
You mean they didn't get that day 3 pick for him yesterday? There was no one in the National Football League who was willing to give up a day 3. Shocks. So Derek Barnett's still on the Eagles.
I told you, you're getting the initiation. So one trade happened. Alberto, don't want to butcher his name yet before I learn it completely, comes in. They weren't able to trade Derek Barnett. Now, the Eagles say he's going to have a role on game day. clearly wanted out because he wants a new contract. How do you get a new contract? He's on the final year. You got to play. So it's understandable. As far as we all knew kind of how he was going to make a trade because he gets antsy and he's going to do something. So we'll start with Alberto. He's kind of a size traits prospect, very big, very fast, but never lived up sort of the hype in Denver. Could that be sort of a out of the box way of handling what I talked about as a receiver? So if you play more 2 tight end sets, but you have a glorified receiver, bigger receiver, whether it's Albert or Grant Calcaterra, who they also kept on the 53. Could they go about it that way? And then does Derek Barnett's presence here, does that concern you about Nolan Smith? We talked about him a little bit. Guy hasn't practiced in 12 days. I mean, and everybody's like, what? It's not that big of a deal. It seems like it's a big deal.
Yeah. You have a lot, 2 questions and 2. I'm trying to separate them in my mind. So why don't we go?
Albert and Nolan Smith.
Yes. So, all right. So regarding Albert, yeah, sure. It's, who knows, as you mentioned, didn't pan out necessarily the way that the Broncos might have wanted him to. So why not take a chance on him, especially given where the Eagles would have been in the waiver order? Why not try to get ahead of that, make a trade of a pretty, late draft pick in 2025 and get the player that you have some interest in who flashed in the preseason, as Howie Roseman spoke about, over 100 receiving yards in the final preseason game. Preseason. Yeah, well, maybe 100 yards, not anything to
it tells
ignore.
Me you played in the preseason game, which is not good if you're a veteran player. So
and the third preseason game, not just any preseason game, the third preseason. But anyway, hey, I think easy perhaps to look at a player and say, oh, I can fix him. We can fix him. He hasn't been exposed to our guys yet. So perhaps maybe the Eagles can in the best case scenario. Not that I feel like fix is the wrong word, but maybe that the Eagles can get something out of him that the Broncos were not able to. And you're right. He has all these raw traits, the size, the speed, the 40-yard dash, the lower body flexibility that Howie Roseman spoke about yesterday. They seem to be really in love with these traits of his. Now it's just about, can they get the most out of him on the field? The more options they have in this offense, the better. It's still probably going to run through the same 3 receivers. However, and who knows what DeAndre Swift will be able to contribute to in the passing game. So the more options that they have, the more that they can spread the ball around, or at least look like they're going to spread the ball around, the better that'll be for the offense. And then as far as Derek Barnett is concerned and Nolan Smith, the fact that we talked to Nolan Smith following his last preseason showing, and he kind of downplayed the situation and didn't think very much of his the injury or whatever it is that he's working through. The fact that he hasn't practiced is certainly not what, as fans, you would want to see, and the team probably doesn't want to see that. So as we get closer to the start of week 1, and if he's not on the field, I certainly the concern level would start to rise a little bit more, but we'll see where he is. I don't know if Derek Barnett's presence on the roster has anything to do with Nolan Smith. One would think that if it were something more serious with Smith, I don't know. I don't know what they would do with him. They would try to stick him on IR and try to get a roster spot there or something. But I'm kind of intrigued to see what happens there with Smith, how quickly he's able to return to practice. And then, with Barnett, we'll see that I guess it's easy to tell us that they want him to have a role on the team, or they envision a role on the team for him, because I don't know what else would they say to us. We don't see a role for him here.
They truly envisioned a role for him on the team. He wouldn't have been given permission to seek a trade 2 days before the cut deadline. So you can read into that whatever you want. And one thing I don't want to read into Nolan Smith is, and he's going to be playing outside linebacker because they're so short at linebacker. Yeah, take a rookie who's hurt, and let's teach him a new position on the fly. That's a game plan.
And my concern was when he got asked about his shoulder, he called it his baby, And he said, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm like, what does that mean? Isn't that a concern? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. That was a red flag to me. That concerned me. So it's something to keep an eye on. I just bring that up for people.
Let me ask you about another non-question that maybe should be a question. Quez Watkins has missed a bunch of time here in the preseason as well. And let me double check. Oh, that's right. 4 wide receivers on the team at a position where NFL teams carry 6 and 7 wide receivers. The Eagles have 4 as of right now. Do we read into that yeah, Quez is fine. We know Quez didn't play much, and Quez missed practice, and Quez hasn't been out there all that much. But yeah, Quez is fine. Are we believing that Quez is 100% fine, or is that something that you got to try and ferret out this week before they get to New England?
Yeah, it's a good question. He did not get a lot of reps in camp just because of the injury and sitting out, which certainly is not, I guess, for someone in his position who's looking to take another step this year in his game. That's not necessarily what you want to see, but they're putting a lot of faith in him to make that step. Whether they know something we don't know his progression, but I'm very curious. He is someone that I think we're all going to have our eye on. In terms of just will he be able to continue to develop and show a little bit more than he has in the past? But yeah, that's a big question mark. I think as we've said all along, the receiving core behind Smith, it's just Devontae Smith and AJ Brown having a great early. It's a big question mark. I thought Zacchaeus looked good in camp. I think he's a good addition to this group. But yeah, behind the 3 of them, it'll be we'll have to learn a lot more as we get closer and closer to that week 1, and as they start to fill out some spots also on the practice squad. I think we should expect to see lots of receivers who were released signed to the practice squad.
Yep.
At Reiner Olivia, last name first name last. Follow her on Twitter, or X as it is now. Make sure you read her at inquirer.com. She's doing a tremendous job with, boy, you guys run deep these days. You got Jeff, you got EJ, you got Josh, plus Sealski and Marcus and all the columnists. So
unlike the Eagles at linebacker, we got a lot of positional depth.
You guys are deep, man. You guys are like the defensive line. That's what you guys run deep. So running backs was sort of like, we kind of knew that at the end. Poor Trey Sermon had to be the crash test dummy in the final preseason game. And by the way, he gets hurt. I feel bad for him. He gets waived injured. But what I want from you is, though, and we don't know, and I always say this, Olivia, because the Eagles are so situationally focused. Like, that's all they practice. They practice red zone. They practice backed up. They practice hurry up. And in those, I'd like to call them high leverage situations, it's Kenny Gainwell. We see Kenny Gainwell. But when they kick it off in New England, and it's 1st and 10 from the 25, who's going to be that volume back, do you think, for the Eagles?
Right now it seems like it could be DeAndre Swift. But I don't know if that is necessarily the kind of running back Swift is. Rashad Penny could really also emerge into that role. He's more of the between the tackles type of runner. But the question with Penny is, can he stay healthy? That'll be, really, that's the big question with most running backs is, can they stay healthy? Can they stay on the field? Luckily for the Eagles, they're bringing in 4 options to start the season. So they've got some guys, but for now, I would assume that Swift is going to get a lot of the touches early on in the season. And then I think the by committee approach will start to kick in. We'll start to see Kenny Gainwell continuing to rise. It seemed like he was, like, as you mentioned, one of the go-to guys during camp, getting reps with the starters. So wouldn't be surprised to see him continue to ascend as the season gets going.
Last one for me, Olivia, and thank you much for jumping in this morning. Since it's the first time we had you on, and rest assured, a return engagement invitation will be in the offing. NFC this year, if we all kind of believe it's the Eagles' conference to lose, they're the defending champs. They've got as good a roster as anybody else. So we believe they're very much in the mix, the top-rated team going into the season. Is it Eagles and 49ers close? Eagles and 49ers and then a drop-off? Eagles and 49ers and then a drop-off to whoever's number 3 or 4 or 5 or 6? Give us your overall read on the NFC picture before they kick off the 2023 season.
Yeah, I think the 49ers are going to be up there. I'm looking forward to seeing whatever the NFC Championship game rematch ends up being. I'm not saying it's going to be 49ers and Eagles necessarily. Who knows?
It's exactly what it's going to be. So go ahead and say it.
Okay. All right, then I said it. There it is. But, in a vacuum, that would make sense, right? But that the league isn't played in a vacuum. Injuries happen, things happen that we don't foresee. So it's hard to sit here. That's why predictions are so difficult. There are just always going to be factors that no one is ever going to be able to foresee. But that's how the sport goes. That's the beauty of what we do. It's fun to discuss. But yeah, I would say those two teams are at the top. I also feel like the Cowboys are going to be up there too, seeming to be pretty competitive. I think I'm excited to see how that game goes as well. Matchup on the road against the Eagles. I'm excited to get back to Dallas. I haven't been there in a while. So yeah, those are kind of the top 3 in my mind, and then there's maybe more of a drop off after that. So, but you never know. You never know. There's always someone who comes out of nowhere, comes out of the woodwork. So it'll be fun to
speaking
follow along with this season.
Speaking of predictions, if somebody would have had Albert O on their prediction, now that would have been impressive. That would have been very impressive.
The season is absolutely scripted if someone would have had Albert O on their
that would have been Bo.
And they knew about it.
Yeah, that would have been Bo because he used to work for the team. So
See, and I would have gone Fred Warner at linebacker, and that didn't happen either. So you got to stick with those that are on the roster when you make your predictions.
Exactly.
Olivia, we appreciated jumping in with us today. Thanks for the insight. And yes, I am speaking from the heart, definitely going to get you back on during the year. Thanks for doing it with us today.
All right. Yeah, of course. Anytime.
Thanks,
our pleasure. Olivia Reiner. See, I was
I got that one right. I got something right.
You got that. You and Zander double team me. You said, I think it's Reiner. I'm going with Rainier.
Yeah.
No, it's
you went
Olivia.
the hockey route. You want you wanted to throw the Frenchness on which it could have been.
And once again, McDonald wrong on the pronunciations. McMullen's much better at the pronunciations than me, which is stupid because I'm a radio guy. I should know how to pronounce somebody's name. John's a writer. All he has to know is how to spell it. Yet he's better at the pronunciations than I am.
I can't spell it yet either. I was copy and pasting that bad boy yesterday. You get it once and just
Alberto. Yeah. You know who's a
learn.
big fan? And we're due to get him on again too. We should now. The college football season is underway. Saratella liked him a lot.
Well, that's because he's a traits guy, man. He's a traits guy. So when you look at him athletically, you're like, wow. That's what the Eagles see in him. A lot of those draft guys like Rick, they love those traits guys. I mean, he's 260. He runs like in the 4.4s. I mean, he can run. But he's had some injuries, never lived up to what they hoped, and he was going to get waived. The report was already out there. That's why when you always see the reports of so-and-so is going to get waived, a lot of times they throw that out there, especially with guys that might have some value and say, well, you better get in line. And the Eagles, remember, as you pointed out astutely yesterday, they're 31st in line.
31st.
Yeah. So they might claim a bunch of guys and not get them. That's only Kansas City's below them for obvious reasons. So that's a difficult spot to be in when it comes to waivers. But I'd rather be a good team and get somebody off waivers. So.
Understood. And do I know that Alberto is going to do anything for the Eagles this year? No, I know nothing. Could he? Yeah, maybe. Here's what I know. It's you and I have kind of batted this one back and forth, and Howie is outstanding. He knows how to play the game. He knows what value is. Dropping down a 6th round pick to a 7th round pick to get a guy who you're going to have on your 53-man roster. Even if he doesn't make it, I'm not going to go back and go, oh my God, how he got fleeced. He would have been released. Why would you give up anything to get a guy who was going to be released? Because then you don't get him. Because somebody else is probably going to grab him. You're going to go 31st, and somebody's going to take him before you. So if you like the player, just dropping down one round.
And by the way, they're 2025 picks too. Which is goofy.
The further away you get away from it, the less value it has.
Yeah,
correct?
Exactly. That's how they look at it. Which is not necessarily the case or should be the case, but that's the way the league looks at it. So, yeah, he gave up essentially nothing. I never. That's why even what I said with Barnett, I said maybe they can get a conditional sixth. I'm not saying that's great. They're probably not going to. If they did make that move, they're probably not going to get anything great out of it by any stretch of the imagination if you're playing the odds. So, I'm not going to. I didn't even get mad at Robert Quinn last year. I'm like, who cares? Take a shot. You're a Super Bowl team. Didn't work. I don't kill him for that.
But you got to be careful with that because we give him that much credit for CJGJ. And that was, again, two day 3 picks. So if we're not, throw away the day 3 pick for Robert Quinn, well, then we can't give Howie too much credit for going out and get CJGJ.
No, I mean, it didn't work. But all I'm saying is I'm not trying to dismiss it and saying it worked. It didn't work at all. He was damaged goods. It was a mistake, but I just don't think it's the kind of mistake that's going to affect you long term, shall I say. So I don't think, I don't think it's going to affect you. So I can't get too worked up about it.
Let me run one more thing by you. Then we got to get a break. We got Eric Edholm, NFL.com, outstanding league writer, is going to join us coming up in 20 minutes from now. Let's say Albert O comes in here and he wows him. Not necessarily with his offense, but with his blocking.
I don't think that's going to happen from everything I read, Jody, but it's possible. He's a big guy.
He's got the size, and if they can convince him, you want to make a name in this league, you want to stay in the league, maybe effort was at times not always there on the blocking aspect of his game. He comes in and surprises him, wows him with his blocking. Do you think Jack Stoll's spot on the roster could be in jeopardy? Because he is, quote unquote, the blocking tight end right now. If Albert comes in here and is as good, if not better than Stoll in the blocking aspect, they break down the film and go, Albert's just as good, that when they need a roster spot, they can't carry 3 tight ends, even looking at Calcaterra as a quasi wide receiver. Could Stoll's roster spot come in question?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, Jack is, I think Jack is a guy that, we obviously he's not sexy, but Jalen Hurts likes him. That impacts things. And plus, I don't think that's the type of player Albert is. I mean, from everything I've read, he's more of a receiver than a blocker. Even though he's almost 6'6", 260. You would think the opposite, but remember, the game has changed, Jody. So a lot of these guys aren't asked to block. Dallas Goedert wasn't asked to block at all, but the Eagles were surprised. They're like, wow, he can block. So when you do have somebody that embraces it, they can do it if he's got that kind of size, but I don't think that's what went on in Denver. So they would have to uncover something, which is possible. But he's more of a receiver than a blocker. So I think it's more related to Grant Calcaterra than Jack Stoll.
We shall see what the role it turns out to be for Alberto here in the Eagles offense. John McMullen, Jody McDonald, the Birds 365 Mac and Mac duo coming back. We got hour number 2 coming your way on the roster claim day.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio, or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild wood days.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com. EAGLES, Eagles.
John McMullen and Jody McDonald, a.k.a. Mac and Mac, hanging with you on Birds 365. Appreciate everybody who streamed in this morning. While you're at it, do your boys a favor, hit the like button, help us with our algorithm a little bit. If you're going to be coming back all year long for Birds coverage, when it really gets underway in New England 10 days from now, we'll be here for you. We'll be here for us, too. Hit the like button. Give us a little acknowledgement. All right. Or as Roman Reigns would say, acknowledge us. McMullen and McDonald, I got a punter question for you, because we know the Eagles have none as of right now, John. They got to get somebody to punt between now and next Sunday when they go to New England. I did check the cut wire. No name jumped out at me. Punters got cut, but they're nameless, faceless guys. Shame on me for not knowing their name or their faces, but they are.
Well, nobody cares about them. That's why.
And certainly the Eagles can. We're going to hold hand with the Eagles on this one and sing Kumbaya, because we might not know them. Apparently, they don't care. But they have to do something. One guy who I thought would potentially shake out, who they could grab, was the kid from Pittsburgh, who was a former Jet, Braden Mann. He kicked for the Jets. The Steelers claimed him last year. There was rumor out there that the Eagles claimed him at the same time, but the Steelers got him. So I said, all right, let me see who the other Steeler punter is. They kept 2 punters.
Yeah.
The Eagles kept none. The Steelers kept 2. And as much as we know the Eagles will be getting a punter, it's almost as obvious that the Steelers have to move a punter. Now, I'm sure they're trying to trade one of the 2 and get some draft capital for them, because when push comes to shove, they've got areas of need too, and you sure as hell don't need 2 punters on your 53-man roster. What do you think they're going to ask for Howie Roseman? Because
I would think nothing more than a 7th, but I don't know if the Eagles even want to do that. I mean, that's what I brought up with Olivia. They were very strong worded behind the scenes that, hey, Aaron might be back, which I don't think would go over well, needless to say, with the fan base. There's a website I use for punters. It's called Puntalytics or whatever. But they say that ex-Saints punter Blake Gillikin would be the best available of the group that was, I guess, lost out or let go. I don't know much about Blake Gilligan.
How do you got any grasp on how they come up with
no idea.
analytics?
No idea. But they pay more attention than I do. And everybody's, matter rises. Everybody wants to bring up the so-called punt god. I don't know if the Eagles want to go down that route.
No, but we're bringing a guy who got suspended from the league for a year for being stupid enough to bet NFL games. But we don't want to pick up a guy who was allegedly involved in some bad behavior, but was proven to not be even around when stuff went down. If there's one team in the league that would take a chance out of me, you would think.
Well, I always say, yeah. Well, there's more to that story. That's the problem. A lot of people say, I mean, he admitted doing some things. He just wasn't around for the alleged
assault,
rape. And that was proven because they had video. But he's acknowledged that he was with the girl who was underage and all that kind of stuff. So there's still some ugly stuff. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the Eagles contradict themselves all the time. I mean, just Howie Roseman contradicted himself in the same press conference, whether it's as simple as preseason or their assessment that, hey, so-and-so deserves a second chance and so-and-so, we don't want to deal with that. I mean, I've always said you either believe in second chances or you don't. For the most part, the Eagles have agreed to give second chances to players they know and players that they're involved with. And then it's sort of pick and choose with outside. Obviously, Michael Vick would be the most notable, but that's a very talented player. In other words, if what went on with Josh Sills went on and he wasn't part of the Eagles, I'm not sure he'd be here. But he was with the Eagles and they got to know him and they gave him the second chance. And by the way, he got waived and
I was going to say, not
on the practice squad. But, I don't think anybody's going to claim him after what went on. So I expect him to be back. But yeah, they're hypocritical, as most people are, to be honest. Most teams are. They give second chance. Andrew Brand always calls it, the more the talent, the more the tolerance. But that's typically the test for most teams. A guy like Deshaun Watson, there was never any doubt Deshaun Watson was going to be back somewhere because of how gifted he was. No matter, other than he went to jail, he was going to be back because he's got too much talent. Might be untoward, but that's just the way it is.
All right. Another question I have for you. We'll put special teams aside for a second because we're both.
Well, the Eagles do. We might as well put them aside.
Exactly. The Eagles kept the disparity. We use the phrase all the time here on Birds 365. I use it around the radio forever. That the Eagles build everything from the trenches out. Think inside first, then go outside. And that is both the offensive and the defensive line. But the disparity between the offense and the defensive line is kind of shocking in that they kept 13 defensive linemen and only 9 offensive linemen. And in any configuration you have, there's 5 offensive linemen. There's no shortchanging an offensive lineman. So the Eagles don't even have a backup for every position on the offensive line. Oh, but they got extras on the defensive side. So that did surprise me, borderline befuddled me a little bit. If Jason Kelce takes a bad step on somebody's ankle and he's got to get rewrapped in the middle of the game, I'm not even talking about missing an entire game, but a portion of a game, somebody's got to go in and snap the football. And we all assume it's going to be Cam Jurgens moving back from guard to center for whatever that short period of time is. Who's moving into Jurgen's spot when he gets back into center if Kelsey misses time? Is it just giving it to Steen because that was the supposed competition between the
I
two?
would not just give it to Steen. It might be Jack Driscoll. By the time the regular season starts, you might see Zach being the backup on essentially. You might see what they did last year with it was, Jack was sort of the backup for the right side. Andre Dillard was the backup for the left side. It might be Fred Johnson's the backup for the left side this year. Jack's the backup for the right side. But yeah, it could certainly be Jack Driscoll when the regular season starts. I don't know if Tyler Steen's ready, but I mean, yeah, Cam's the backup center, though. I mean, the only question is they don't have anybody else, so he's the backup center. So the only question is who moves in to guard.
Right.
And yeah, right now, if I had to bet, I'd probably say they'd lean the veteran because they already know Jack can do it, and let Tyler sort of continue to learn. But that's just speculation. Tyler Steen, every time they've done it in training camp, it's been Tyler Steen. But remember, they're trying to teach him the position. He didn't play the position before. So when Cam has been at center, he's been at right guard for every snap. But they know what Jack can do, and they know he can already play the position.
No, and we hope that kind of like Marcus Mariota is here, and you hope to never see him, that Jalen Hurts takes every snap, all 17 games. The only time Marcus gets in there is the handoff when Eagles are up by 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Same thing with Jason Kelsey. You hope that he snaps the ball every single snap, and he's got a better track record of it than Jalen Hurts does because Jalen has missed at least one game each of the last 2 years. Kelsey doesn't miss, so you got to hope that that's the case so they can just leave Beef Jerky at guard and let him continue to grow there. I ran this by Olivia as well, and I didn't get an updated comment from you. Jalen Hurts is going to play quarterback for the Eagles, right? Because we don't seem to discuss him much here on Birds 365. How and I don't think we're making a mistake or doing a disservice to Jalen Hurts, but it's just flat out weird that we're starting a season. We're only days away from a season getting underway, and we don't discuss the guy who was the runner-up for the MVP in the National Football League.
Yeah, we never taught him. It was Jalen Hurts 365. Then it became Bijan Robinson 365. Now it's Birds 365 again because nobody talks about. Yeah, I mean, he deserves the benefit of the doubt. Look, I think it's going to be more difficult this season than last season for a number of reasons. I don't think, the offensive line is as good without Isaac. Hopefully Cam can develop, and I think he looks good. I'm not concerned about it, but I think it's probably not good to assume he's going to be as good as Isaac was last year. And the depth, Fred Johnson's a great story, but he's not Andre Dillard. That's not even close. That you talked about the disparity. The disparity exists between the offensive and defensive fronts because the defensive front is much deeper than the offensive line. The 5 guys are good, and I include Cam in that. I think he's going to be good, just not as good as Isaac right away. But the backups after Jack, who's and we've seen, I mean, there's still going to be a significant down play if Jack Driscoll's forced to play because you can't replace Lane Johnson. You can't replace these all-pro level players. So the depth is not quite as good. The schedule's more difficult. And then we talked about all the career years. Everybody last year was pretty special. Typically, I know somebody said he thinks this is the best roster. Might have been McLean thinks this is the best roster Howie's ever put together. Boy, I don't think it's as good as last year's on paper.
Not on the defensive side of the ball. And I understand they couldn't keep Hargrave because he was going to get paid, and San Francisco paid him. If they didn't, somebody else would. And the Eagles had to let him go. But and we just believe that the guys they're bringing in there are going to be better. But until they do it, you're still evaluating the roster with a first-year player and a second-year player out of Georgia who haven't really produced anything on the field in the National Football League. Jordan Davis does his job, and that's to take up 2 blockers, but there isn't a big accumulation of production from him. And until he actually plays a game, you're just projecting with the number 9 pick in the draft.
Yeah, and I mean, I love Carter. You know that.
So do I. We both do, but he hasn't played it down yet in the game that counts.
No. Yeah, right. And Zander says Angelo Cataldi said it was the best of his career on Dan Cilia's show. So, yeah, I think last year's now coming into last season, we didn't know how good that roster was. So maybe at the beginning you say, well, I didn't feel this way. But now we have the benefit of hindsight and saying, I don't see how they can be as good as last year's team, other than if you get better on special teams. And I don't, can you technically, could you be the number 2 offense or the number 1 offense? Yes. Could you be the number 1 defense? Yes, that's possible. Is it likely? I wouldn't bet on it. So yeah, I mean, 5 starters on defense, not as much upheaval on the offense. But again, are you going to assume Cam Jurgens, who's never played right guard, is going to be better than Isaac Seumalo, who was a Pro Bowl alternate last season? I believe belonged in the Pro Bowl, to be honest. And Miles, I mean, are you going to assume this amalgamation of running backs is going to produce the way Miles Sanders did last season? I guess it's possible, but again, I wouldn't bet on it. Yeah, I think last year was a deeper team. So there's going to be more hiccups, but I don't question Jalen Hurts any longer. And everybody brings up, JAKIB Sports here, occasionally clips our quotes and puts them up. And I got like 4 people again this week. I get it constantly because I said, and this is back in, the off season of 20, whenever, when the Eagles were trying to get Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson to consider them.
Yep.
I said, Jalen Hurts will never become what Kyler Murray was at the time. And by the way, Kyler Murray was coming off a heck of a season. Wasn't outrageous at the time by any stretch of the imagination. But people put it out there today like I said it yesterday, And anybody who watches this show knows, hey, I was wrong about Jalen Hurts. Now, there's a lot of fans who can't admit they were wrong about Jalen Hurts because they say, oh, no, I knew he was going to be the runner-up to MVP. No, you didn't.
Nobody.
And if you did, you're just blindly loyal to the Eagles, and you could have inserted any name that was playing quarterback for your favorite team. But he has, since that time, he has gone on to prove himself to the point where I don't question Jalen Hurts. And I say it all the time. He might be a better quarterback this year, and the Eagles might not win as many games. That is very, very possible. But I don't question Jalen Hurts anymore.
He has become just an afterthought because of the season that he had last year, because he elevated his game as much as he did. We just don't concentrate on him as much as we did. We will as soon as the game starts being played, because then the quarterbacks take back over, and they are front and center on almost every single conversation. All right, we got just a minute or two before Eric at Home's going to join us. Practice squad going to be named today. First, you go through the waiver claim at noon. You find out by 1 o'clock who you do or did or didn't get. If you put in a claim, whether you got the guy or not. If you get a claim, then you got to cut somebody from your 53. So then you're going to have your full 53-man roster, and then you can fill out your whole practice squad. What is the practice squad going to look like? Is it just a given it? It's going to be out of 16 players, 15 guys that were cut here? Do you think the Eagles will be scouring anybody else's roster to offer them a practice?
Oh yeah, there's always one or two that they bring in from outside, but the vast majority is going to be guys who were just released and waived, and they're going to bring them back. 13, 14 are going to be guys that just come right back, haven't left, will be at practice because they know they're going to clear waivers. The vast majority. And, the Devin Allens of the world, Britton Cubbies, they need, as we said, they need bodies. Julian Good-Jones, if you want to talk about an offensive lineman, is just going down the list. Obviously, Garner at cornerback, if he gets through waivers, he'll be back.
How about Josh Sills?
Josh, I think, will be back. I'm just going down the list. Kyron Johnson, I think, will be back. Joseph Nada, I think, will be back. If they can get Janaris Robinson through waivers, I think he'll be back. Brady Russell will definitely be back, the tight end. His uncle is Matt Russell. He's the Eagles' senior director of personnel. Aaron Sipas, the Eagles admitted he might be back on the practice squad. Ben Van Sumeren's a given. Greg Ward, it's his birthright to be on the practice squad. So most of them.
But you only, just one quick clarification on the practice squad. Correct me if I'm wrong. Only 6 veterans, right?
I think
of
it's
the
4.
16 guys.
I think it's 4.
I think it's 6. I think you have 6.
I'll double
veterans.
check.
I think you have 10 of the 16 have to be rookies and or second year guys.
Yeah.
And when we say veterans, that's the cutoff. Once you're a third year player, you're a veteran. So I think the split is 6 and 10. I think you can have 6 veterans, and most of those fell into the category of perfectly fine. They're young enough, but a couple of those guys, like Sills, is a third year guy now, right? Oh no, he's a rookie.
Second year, yeah,
he's a second year.
He's
so
fine. He's
guy.
fine either way. But they'll bring in a couple outsiders, and that probably won't be there today. So, but the vast majority are going to be guys they just released. You're right. It's 6. It's not 4. So it is 6 with no limitations on experience. I don't think the Eagles will keep 6 veterans on the practice squad. It is still more for younger players. And they still look at it that way.
Is Sipas a veteran?
Aaron would be in that category. They're going to work out punters today. And, if they like somebody better, Aaron is probably gone, but they bent over backwards to say, look, if we don't like somebody better, we're just going to put him on the practice squad and elevate him probably for the first 3 weeks and then decide at that point whether it's going well. And if it's going well, he'll be back on the roster. I know that's not what Eagles fans want to hear, but there is a window open for him coming back, and Howie admitted that.
And that's what they have to deal with as of today. All right. We're going to take a time out here. Then you're going to come back and hear from more Mac and Mac. I just got a text from Eric at home who just reached out to me and said, I so greatly apologize. He just got info on a story that he's got to write for NFL.com. He was certainly planning on coming on with us, but he's right in the middle of, I don't know if it's breaking news or whatever, but it's a story that he got hit with. So he's got to take care of that for NFL.com. So you get that much more Mac and Mac. John McMullen, Jody McDonald sticking around for more Birds 365.
Go passionately. Go fearlessly. Go confidently.
Go Birds!
Go confidently towards your goals with First Trust, Philly's hometown bank for nearly 90 years, and the official bank of the Philadelphia Eagles. We're focused on getting you over the goal line. So go with conviction, go with trust,
Go Birds!
and go forward with us by your side. First Trust Bank, the official bank of Philadelphia dreams. Up and go Birds.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
EAGLES, Eagles.
You got McMullen and McDonald here with you on Birds 365. We are going back over what the Eagles did to get their original 53-man roster in place yesterday. And both John and I have questions, not overt, like, oh, my God, what the hell are they thinking? This roster isn't good. No, we like the talent on the Philadelphia Eagles. Both John and I think that they're the most talented roster in the NFC this year. We'll see if it plays itself out on the field. Shoot, John asked last segment, is this the most talented roster that Howie Roseman's ever put together? I can easily say yes to that. The question is it the most balanced roster that the Eagles have ever put together? As we sit here at 53 today, I can't say that because they don't have a punter and they don't have a punter. And Sirianni was actually funny yesterday. The whole thing about Jordan Mailata. Well, I'm not going to ask him to go back and go, Jordan, we love you, from Howie. You were there. You went to all their practices. No, they have practices where you're not allowed in or whatever else. Did you ever get the feeling that the Eagles were confident that anyone else who is now still on their 53-man roster could return punts for them during this preseason, J-Mac?
No, I throughout practice, when Britton Covey was healthy, the rotation was Britton Covey, Greg Ward, who, when he was healthy, followed by Quez Watkins, and then Devontae Smith, who they give a couple reps to because he's the high leverage guy that if they need a return late in the game. And then AJ would do it, which would excite people, but he admitted he did it just to have some fun. To warm up and things like that. So those were the four guys. And if you remember, when Britton Covey strained his hamstring, perfect example of can't make the club in the tub is Britton Covey. And Greg Ward got hurt at the same time. It was like Zach McPherson all of a sudden was returning punts. Had never seen him take a rep in his life, and I've been there for Zach's entire career. Obviously, never saw him take a punt return rep in practice ever. And there he was in a game taking them, and he did a fine job, at least navigating and catching the football. And then he got hurt. And then it became Alameda, who got some work as well. Now he gets an occasional rep. I should have brought him up. And Justin Evans, though, was the other one that was out of left field. who I'd never seen taking a punt return rep before. And he started taking some punt return reps. So, yeah, they don't have a natural punt returner if they were forced to play the game today. And obviously, I don't think they're going to go out and identify a punt returner. I think it would be Olamide or Justin. Or they might just elevate Britton Covey because I think they'll get him through waivers and get him back on the practice squad. And that's what they did at the start of last year. I think that's how it would be. You know, the larger special teams talk, Jody, you know, maybe the Eagles, oh, excuse me, I got all choked up because I feel for Michael Clay.
Yes,
Maybe the Eagles believe the new kickoff return rule. Now, we saw everybody returning kickoffs in the preseason because nobody cares. They're trying to look at individual players. In the regular season, unless you're Cordero Patterson or somebody like that, I think everybody's going to take the knee or take the fair catch and take it at the 25. And maybe the Eagles' philosophy is, well, no kickoff return, no kickoff coverage. And similarly, there's so many good punters, except for the Eagles, but so many of these guys that, you know, busted, like the kid from Tennessee, the kid from Minnesota, they busted 55 yards on the reg, and they're tremendous when it comes to hang time. You never get a chance to return punts, so maybe they say less punt returns, less punt coverage value. That's the only thing I can think of. Then that's why they devalued it. And partially that's true, but again, as you get late in the season, and especially the Eagles play outdoors in Philadelphia, last time I checked, there's the occasional issue with weather, and all of a sudden the kickoffs aren't flying as far as they usually do. The punts are not flying as far as they usually do. And all of a sudden you got to go cover a kick.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened in the stinking Super Bowl. And they couldn't do it in the biggest spot. So I don't know. I don't think they learned their lesson.
All right, John, let's play this a couple steps forward. You mentioned guys who could be coming back to the practice squad, not only on the practice squad, but could get elevated because they fill a specific role on a given day. They could get the nod, can only do it 3 times, and you got to make a decision. But you have some early flexibility where you can be juggling the roster and have a practice squad player as one of your active players. What was your phrase last year about the Eagles inactives? The sermon from the book of Job.
Yes,
because Trey Sermon and Ian Book and Josh Job were inactive every single week. Don't know who those guys are going to be this year. Don't think there's necessarily going to be a given everything. But a couple of guys who may be inactive because they're replaced by a practice squad player for a specific special teams reason. You're going to be able to work street into that catchy phrase real well this year with Contavious. How about a Barnett? Do you think that Derek Barnett is a given? If he's their 6th defensive end, is he a given to be activated every single game because of it? They told him, God, seek a trade. Day 3 pick. He's still here.
No,
and they're not going to cut him because it'd be a big dead cap hit because Howie's cut one of those lengthy, dead, evaporating years on his contract, so they don't want to cut him. Will he be told, yeah, you're not dressing today, Derek?
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with Nolan Smith, to be honest, and his health. But I don't think he's the same. Like, I think they can't dress everybody. So I would think they got to dress 8 because that's what they believe in. I think they'll dress 9. And he would probably be the 9th if everybody's healthy. So I still think he would get dressed.
You're talking 9 defensive linemen.
Yeah. Because they want 4 edge guys.
You think they keep more of an extra defensive end or an extra defensive tackle? If it's going to be 9 and it's 4 and 4. Who's the swing guy? An extra
I
DT?
think Barnett's the swing guy. Yeah, I think
So you
he's
think
the
it'd be
ninth
more
guy.
of a defensive end than a defensive tackle?
Yeah.
So then, who are the four defensive tackles who are going to be in the mix? Marlin going to be a inactive on a regular basis for this team?
The defensive tackles, obviously, Fletcher, Jordan, Jalen, Milton would be the 4 main guys. Defensive ends, it'd be Reddick, Sweat, Graham, Barnett.
Smith.
Remember, Graham can kick inside, so that's part of it. Smith and yeah, I think Barnett would be over Marlin. But it could also be game plan specific because Marlin is the backup sort of to Jordan Davis, but they also want a different backup to Jordan Davis. So it's not like they can't replicate what Jordan Davis brings with Marlon Tuipulotu, who I like as a player, by the way. I think he's underrated. I think he's a good player. But the larger point is,
all right, let me stop you right there. Who's going to be the Jordan Davis back? Who's going to be the guy when Jordan is off the field because he's not going to play every single snap? They rotate guys in. Who's going to play Jordan's role when he's not on the field?
Well, they're not going to have that player, but they don't have that player. They don't have that player.
So the responsibilities change.
Well, yeah,
Davis is off the field.
So in essence, they use the variable front. So they use the 50 front, the 40 front. The 50 front, Jordan's going to be on the field. If Jordan gets hurt, then obviously Marlon's going to be active and he's going to play that role, but he can't play that role. So it's like he's playing out of position. Similar to what Javon Hargrave did in year 1 before they had Jordan Davis and got Linval Joseph and had somebody for that role. So yeah, somebody's got to play out of position. It would more likely be, Fletcher Cox and Jalen Carter together in 40 fronts as the main guys, with Milton Williams mixing in as, if Jordan's not available. But they tried, with Noah Ellis. They've been trying. They brought in Olave Sagapulu, who's 330. Robert Cooper's 340. They brought in all these guys, but it's hard to find 340-pound guys that can move like Jordan Davis.
Just not there.
Yeah, there's not a lot of those guys. No. But the larger point to me is when you talk about, look, I get it. Kentavious Street is an NFL player. I get it. But how many dominoes would have to fall for him to play on this team? So what is the point, Jody? I mean, if you think you can get a 7th round pick by keeping him on the roster, these extra 24 hours or 48 hours, fine. If that's the plan. But how is he going to – and he's got a 1-year deal. He's not long-term. He's not a young player.
No.
So I don't get it from that perspective. And I'm not criticizing him as a player, as I said, but how do you get to him? It's confounding to me.
It doesn't add up for me. The numbers just don't add up, keeping as many defensive tackles as they did. But again, what we define as defensive tackles, we don't know are defensive tackles anymore because of 40 fronts and 50 fronts and different ways to use guys. So the Eagles just love defensive line players, but only so many are going to get dressed every single given Sunday. So a bunch of guys are going to be inactive. I did want to get back to linebacker with you as well, because that was one thing I did get right about the predictions yesterday, which, by the way, who won the contest?
Nobody yet. It always comes down to the practice squad. There's like,
is that the tiebreaker?
Yeah. I'm going to pull it up for you.
Is it the full roster? I thought it was just the 53.
No, well, it's a 53, but everybody ties. There's usually 3 or 4 people that tie, and then whoever gets the most on the practice squad is the tiebreaker. Usually, I've come in second, I don't know, 3 times, and I've lost on practice squad. 7 tied with 51.
Oh, really? There's that. And how many in the contest?
Probably 15, 20.
So half of the field has got the same number.
Yeah. EJ, our buddy EJ Smith, BLG's in it. Seamus Clancy's in it. Elliott Shore Parks, the biggest upset in the world, is still alive. Zach Berman, Jeff McLean, and our good friend Andrew DeCecco, first time participator.
Nice.
And he's still alive. So good job for Andrew. Those are the guys, and you'll notice no McMullen, no Bowold, no Dave Zancaro, no Jimmy Kempsky.
No Kratz.
Yeah. No Kratz. Britton Covey killed me. Too much deference to him. Aaron Cepas. I had Aaron Cepas on the roster.
Did anyone not have a punter?
2 guys did not put. Elliott was one.
Then I give him the win right now. That's the tie. The tiebreaker goes between
and
those
I
two.
forget there were 2.
If they were smart enough to know the Eagles were going to try and get by without a punter on the 53-man roster, they should get a prize.
Yeah, I seriously thought about the Eagles doing the Rick Lobato thing.
Right. You and I discussed that. I thought I gave that at least
it turns out they did it at punter, and they're going to try again. They're going to try to find an upgrade. And if they don't, Aaron might be back. But yeah, and also see, part of the reason is, I try to beat these guys. So like my goal is
you got to take a shot. Yeah.
Yeah. My goal is to beat Bo and Jimmy and those guys. And we have the friendly back and forth. And I said, this team needs special teams players. So that was my whole thought process behind Mekhi Gardner. And I took my shot, and that got me down to 50. Otherwise I'd be in the mix. But if I got it right, I'm in tremendous shape, because all these guys went the opposite direction.
Ricks.
Yeah. So that's how razor thin it is. But
comes down to one guy at one position.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of one position, you made me think earlier when we were talking about where the Eagles are short and the like, and the fact that they've only got 3 linebackers. If I were in your contest, I would have had Nakobe Dean, Zach Cunningham. And
I had
Christian
only
Ellis.
3 linebackers. I got that part right.
Yeah, some people were suggesting that it was going to be more than that. I didn't think so. But they got to do something there, right, John? And I don't want to jinx the guy, but the truth is the truth, and history is history. Zach Cunningham is a Philadelphia Eagle because, as much of anything else, he's injury prone. Otherwise, he would have landed on a team prior to in preseason signing like he was. Now, to his credit, he's come in here, earned the job, earned a spot on the roster, probably going to be the starting linebacker next to Nakobe Dean. So I tip my hat to Zach Cunningham for what he's brought to the table. But what he also brings is an injury history. And you talk about going short in a position. I think it was always you mentioned that the 2 linebackers last year never got hurt. They were on their field every single game, every single snap, and the Eagles could have gotten by with 3 linebackers last year. Now they got Zach Cunningham, who's been hurt a ton during his career. They got to add another. Is Van Sumeren going to be it? Are they going to bring him back from the practice?
I think they might. I do not think that Nick Morrow had a terrible training camp. I think he might be back, but he's a guy who's a vested veteran, and I think he'll look around first. But nobody, the Eagles signed him, didn't give him any guaranteed money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I remember we talked to our buddy Brad Spielberger. He kind of explained that, well, maybe he decided, because he had a decent season in Chicago. Now, it was worst team in football.
Put up numbers, yeah.
But he put up some numbers, played okay. And he said, Brad praised it. And Brad's a Chicago guy. He's a Chicago fan. Praised it as, he's going from playing with the worst defensive front in the league to arguably the best defensive front. And from his perspective, maybe he said, you know what? If I can play a season behind this group, I'm going to look that much better, and then I could, turn it into a better contract. So I think he might be back on the practice squad. But that depends on his other options. Ben's definitely going to be back. I mean, definitely. And because he can play special teams.
Is he going to be thank you for getting my question before I asked it. You cut me off perfectly. Is he just going to be on the practice squad all year, getting reps and getting better and taking another shot again next year? Or is he a guy who can actually get elevated and be a special teams guru type guy? What do you see Van Sumeren as, assuming he's back on this practice squad?
I think he's more of a developmental guy. I don't think he'd be the first guys to get elevated for special teams. I think that would be Mackay and maybe Devin. Devin Allen was really good at it in the preseason. When Zach went down and they tried him at gunner, he was really good at it. So I think Ben would be further down on the list. I think he would be more of a true developmental guy that just sits and learns. And that was the book on him. Great athlete, but very raw. Didn't have a lot of playing time at the position. And that's kind of how it worked itself out. You saw, what do you have, 17 tackles in the preseason finale.
And that should count because the Eagles now put an emphasis on the preseason finale.
Alberto
got 100 yards. That preseason finale could be huge at moving the needle.
Yeah, you never see 100-yard games. That's what they said in the preseason. Well, yeah, because nobody plays.
Right.
I mean, what? But yeah, I definitely think he's going to be back. I can't imagine anybody would claim him to put on the 53, Van Sumeren. So I think he'll be back.
We shall see who's coming back and who the Eagles are going to make a play for. All right, he's McMullen. I'm McDonald. Mac and Mac, guys. We got one more segment. Eric, get home again. Text me, apologize greatly. Was planning on being here with us. Enjoys coming on the show. Said, I owe you one. When you can get me back on, please let's do it as soon as possible.
It happens. I know how that feels, man. Somebody tells you got to do this immediately. And
McMullen's he's an actual writer. I'm just a stupid analyst there on YouTube and on the radio. Yeah, guys have actual deadlines that they are told, we need this now. So, unfortunately, Eric got scooped up and had to do something. But we'll get him on before the season starts. That's a promise. All right, Mac and Mac coming back. You know what we need to do. Put a bow on the show.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Heading down the shore, have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wild wood days.
and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season, and let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com. EAGLES, Eagles.
McMullen and McDonald, your Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. All right, John, let's get a timeline for the folks today. Know that you have to have all your claims in by noon this afternoon. By 1 o'clock, the NFL will tell every single team who you did or didn't get via claim. If you do get a player, then you've got basically an hour to figure out who you're going to cut from your 53-man roster, because you got to make room for him. And then afterwards, you can start to build your practice squad. They put a whole bunch of practice squad people in place already. They can't do it officially because players could still get claimed. Nobody knows who's claimed yet, so you can't do it officially, but you can do it unofficially. What's the time frame for practice today? How many practice squad guys do you think are actually going to be part of it?
3 o'clock, the Eagles are practicing at Lincoln Financial Field, by the way, for some reason.
Really? Why the link today?
I have no idea.
More coaching communication drills?
More communication.
Okay.
Well, when we get to talk to Nick again, I'm sure he'll be asked at some point. Yeah, like I said, probably 12, 13 will be. It's just guys being brought back. Pretty significant number. By the way, the Phillies are playing at 1, I think. So that's going to be a cluster.
True. Fun down in South Philly.
It's going to be a cluster, you know what? So that's not a good day for me. So they're practicing there, and it's later. It's later in the day because of that reason, because they want the guys back for the practice squad to practice.
Makes 100% sense. The lot where you park, I parked when I was going down there to do the shows for WIP and stuck around for practice. Do they collect parking for the Phillies for that lot? Do they use that for Philly parking at all, or
yes?
Is that just
well, that lot is. We don't have to park there now. We can park in the NovaCare complex, but it's so crowded during training camp. We have to park in the Naval lots, which is right next to
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. We don't have to park in that lot now. We can park in the NovaCare, the actual NovaCare complex. Once training
with the swinging gate.
Yeah. Inside. We can park inside.
Did I mention the time here on Birds 365 what happened to me when I was doing a WIP morning show?
Couldn't get in.
Getting there at 5, whatever.
Nobody's there.
Be on the air at 6. Oh no, security was there. And you know what else was there? The friggin' sprinklers. I had to walk up to the security gate to get a pass, and I got completely doused by the sprinklers that are on at 5:30 in the morning. What the hell are you doing running sprinklers at 5:30 in the morning?
You got to get it over with before the people come.
Soaked before the show ever started, sitting around in wet pants at 5:40 in the morning. Thank you very much. Anyway, and I always park over in the Navy lot. I'm not a big enough deal to get into, even though they told me you can park in there. You can park right up front. No, I'll go. I'll hang out with the rest of the show.
Not me, man. I want to be in the
NovaCare.
I want to be in the secured environment. You never know when people are coming.
I parked the next lot down. I'm in the Navy lot. All right, you and me tomorrow. We'll have the newest version of the Eagles 53-man roster, and there can be continual versions of it right up until they.
By the way, Vikings are waiving Jalen Reagor.
No, Reagor's available.
Eagles need a punt returner.
He can return punts.
Eagles need a punt returner. Reunion. No, I don't think that's going to happen.
I'd bet good money against that. All right. Tomorrow we got Johnny Stallness, our buddy from Bleeding Green Nation, Eye on the Enemy podcast. He'll be jumping in with us, and we'll somehow finagle another guest. Maybe Eric get home. If he doesn't have another story break on him tomorrow, we'll work on that. J-Mac, have a good time. I know you got a hectic, busy day in front of you. You'll be back with me mañana?
Yeah, let's do it.
McMullen and McDonald right back here in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.